We'll have a go. We are live. Hello, everyone. Where? Today's guest is Linda Sigmund. I'm sure we're going to have a fantastic time with Linda. I'm sure we've just got a few problems at the moment, but I'm sure we'll be fine now. Hopefully, the show will go ahead without any problems at all. Yeah, Linda's story is a remarkable story going back to when she was 16 years old with the Mothman. I'm sure we'll have a fantastic time and she'll tell us all about what happened. Can we please welcome Linda to the show? Hello, Linda.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Yeah, okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with the Mothman.
I grew up in a little river town in Ohio called Pomeroy, and it is about 25 miles from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where the Mothman was sighted. I have had paranormal things happen to me my entire life. The house I grew up in had belonged to my great-grandfather, and I heard things walking and saw shadows and things all my young life. My first paranormal experience was seeing my guardian angel at the age of 3. And then I saw a gray alien at 5, which I thought was a robot because that's all I had to, compare it to. And then at 16, I had my experience with the Mothman. And after that, I started really escalating as far as my paranormal abilities. And all through my junior and senior year in high school, I had quite the time because I found out that I could feel everybody's emotions and hear everybody's thoughts. And when I was in a room with a large amount of people, it was very hard for me, especially teenagers. And then I got married and moved to the little town of Coolville, Ohio. And I lived there for 50 years. And now I live in Parkersburg with my adopted son, Chris, and our 2 mountain feists, Phoebe and Murphy. And in 2017, I was contacted by the Round Town UFO Society out of Circleville, Ohio, to come and tell my story because I was searching for help online after all these years of going through all this paranormal stuff. I wanted answers. And I felt that there was a lot of things that were left unsaid and unfounded. So I went up there and met a lady that was a member of the Round Town UFO Society, and she was a licensed hypnotherapist. And she wanted to regress me and find out exactly what happened. So this, in 2017, I had that happen and found out quite a few things and was able to remember a whole lot more of what happened in my experience of April 1967. So that's kind of where I am today, but I continue to use my abilities to help other people that are going through the same experiences. Plus, I am a crypto magnet, I guess you would call it, because I think what I have now in my woods are a couple of Bigfoot and maybe a dog man. So I go out in the woods when I can with my dogs, and I'm not afraid of anything. So that's what I do.
Good
And
for
that's
you.
what I am. Yeah. That keeps me feeling
You know,
young.
of course it does, and you look young as well. Tell us
Thank
about your
you.
experience with the Mothman. How it
Um,
started when you were 16.
yes. The Mothman was first sighted in November 1966. Um, I think that experience was in Clendenin, West Virginia, where a couple of grave diggers saw a flying entity over top the graves when they were digging a grave. And then it was there was a couple of teenagers that saw it in what they call the TNT area of Point Pleasant, and that was an old munitions building where during World War II they made stuff for bombs for the Second World War, and then it was abandoned, and kids hung out there a lot, me included. But back then they had an experience with a flying creature, and that just escalated from there. And I think it lasted about 13 months. But my experience was this time of year, April 1967. My boyfriend, who lived across the Ohio River from me, not very far, I had just started dating him, and we decided we'd go look for the Mothman, but we didn't want to go to Point Pleasant, particularly because my parents asked me not to go down there because of all the hoopla that's going on. And so we went across the Plumley Mason Bridge, and we went back into the hills, probably about 2.5 miles. Now, it was about 7:15 when he picked me up in the evening, and we just thought we'd just go out there and sit in a field and see what we could see and stargaze and enjoy each other's company. So we got out to where we were going, which it probably took us, I don't know, maybe only about 5 minutes to get out to where we were. And we pulled in a pasture field and turned around, and we're facing out the gravel road that we came in on. And he had a quilt in the back of his car that his grandmother had given him. He just had a birthday. He had just turned 17. And so we took the quilt and put it on the front of his 56 Chevy and climbed up on that. And we're sitting there talking, and it was starting to get dark. And I noticed he was looking at something over his right shoulder. I'm like, what are you looking at? He's like, look at that star over there. That sure is strange. And over in the east was a big star, and it would pulsate it little and then get bigger and little and bigger. Well, it wasn't a star. It burst suddenly through the clouds. Everything turned red and pink. And by this time it was dark. But there were no leaves on the trees yet because it was early spring. And we're still sitting there looking. And I said, oh, being raised in the 50s, you think nuclear war, I thought somebody had dropped the bomb. It was that fantastic, but no sound. That was an odd thing. But now I perceive it to maybe be something coming through a portal. But what it looked like was a supernova, a big explosion in the sky. So I thought it was a long way off, and we're still sitting there looking at it, and there's no leaves on the tree, so we can see clear through to where the object is. And it started to move. And he's like, oh, that's not a star. Like, yeah, no kidding. So it started to move and move from our right to our left. And we noticed that it was just right behind the trees. And it was a huge, round, orange ball, which I would say was just a little bit bigger than the biggest full moon you would see. So that's what it looked like. Treetop high, moving from right to left till it got to the gravel road we had come in on. and it stopped right above the road. And it was up about 100 feet at the most. And it still looked like a big red ball, but it didn't make any sound. None at all. And two teenagers sitting there wondering what the heck, out somewhere where we're not supposed to be, looking for something that's not supposed to be, and then seeing something. Then it started to move towards us very slowly. Oh, no, 2 miles an hour, maybe, very slowly. It moved right above the car, and my boyfriend jumped off the car. I'm like, all right, he leaves me there. It's like, thanks a lot. And I look up, and oh gosh, it's probably at the most 20 feet above me. No noise. Bright light all around, but I can't see stars for this object. And when it moved in on us, it moved in round, But when it got to us, it was flat on the bottom. So being the curious kid that I was, I just sat there and looked at it, and it made a noise, I say, like a vacuum cleaner. That's the only thing I could attribute it to. It was kind of like a small engine noise, but yet nothing that would hurt your ears. Yeah, the suction noise. And the light was so bright, but it didn't hurt your eyes. And then there were lights above it, underneath it, I mean, in the shape of a T or a cross. Red at the top, then blue across, and then a couple white ones down through the middle. And I'm like, I knew about UFOs, but I had read a lot of the old UFO magazines and stuff up to that point. I was always interested in it because of my paranormal experiences, but I never dreamed I'd ever see anything like that. So the next thing I remember, because I had about a half an hour missing time, I was in the car on the passenger side now. My boyfriend was behind the wheel. And I said, how'd we get in the car? And he said, we're getting out of here. And the thing is still right above us. It's still right above us. And he finally gets the car started, and we start to pull out. And the light from the UFO encompasses the entire area. And as we start to pull out, I notice on the left-hand bumper of the car, right off of the bumper under the object, stands a giant creature. This creature was anywhere between 7 and 9 feet tall. It was giant. And it had wings, and it put its wings back. And it made no sound. And it gave a jump like Superman, up and away. It jumped from the left bumper up over the front of our car. Just, it was gone into the trees across the road. I'm like, oh, do you see that creature? And he's like, I'm trying to get us out of here. And I said, but didn't you see it? He goes, yeah, I saw it. It's a UFO. And he's driving through the pasture field, and we're jumping. And we didn't have seat belts. And I was hanging out the passenger side. And we get almost to the road, and the UFO goes down over the hill, and we turn on the gravel road to the left, fishtailing like this. He almost lost the car. He almost lost control. And we get down over the hill, and I'm like, I want to go back there. I want you to see that creature. And he's like, I saw it. And I said, you saw that creature? That's that Birdman. That's what we called it. He's like, I didn't see any Birdman. And I said, well, then let's get down here and stop and talk about it because we're going back up there. I want you to see it. I want you to witness it. He had nothing to do with that. So we went down over the hill, maybe a quarter of a mile. And there was an old strip mine where they had strip mined coal. And we pulled in there, and he said, let's just settle down and talk about what happened. And we pull in there and we turn partway around so that we can see the road in case any cars come. And we're probably 30 or 40 feet off the road, the main road there. In the dark, no sound, no houses around, just trees and us in the car. The windows are down. And that suddenly from the area where we came was a bright light coming on that road that we came in on. And I'm like, there comes a car. Or is there a full moon? He goes, no, there's not supposed to be a full moon, I don't think. I said, well, something's coming up over that road. Suddenly, this second object, about the size of a Volkswagen, a small car, comes up over the rise, comes up over the road. It's only about 3 feet above the road. And this one's a lot smaller, and it's white. Bluish white. I said, oh, they're coming after us. They're going to find us. They're going to get us. So he's just sitting there, just dumbfounded, and so am I. And the thing comes up parallel with us, stops in the middle of the road, and comes towards our car. Well, it came slower than the other one. And this one is traveling about 3 feet above the road. It comes clear up to the car, the side of the car door where he's sitting, and stops. And it sits there for a few seconds, and then it goes around the side of the car to the front. And it sits there at the edge of the bumper of the car, the front bumper. And we're sitting there looking at it like, can you see inside it? No. And it didn't make any noise at all. It didn't hurt your eyes to look at it. But the weird thing about that one is it appeared to be alive. Now, I couldn't understand that back then, that something like that could possibly be alive. I do now, with AI and everything. But it was like it was trying to convey something to us. I don't know how long we sat there, but we looked at our watches, and it was 8:30, 8:35. We're like, where'd all that time go? And suddenly, without any noise, it raised up over the hood of the car and was gone. I was on the floor of the car, and he was behind the wheel. We both exited the car, and it was gone. So, we decided that we would leave before something else happened. So he decided he would take me home. Well, where we were is a little town called Mason, West Virginia, which is about 20 minutes from Point Pleasant. And we pull out to Mason, turn left, turn right, and go across the bridge. Now, I live down below the bridge, about 50 yards downriver. And he took me across the bridge, and I said, I don't feel right. He said, I don't either. How do you feel? And I said, I feel like something entered my mind and swept it clean. I wish something would do that now, but it felt like I can say something was uploaded. Mhm. He said, I feel the same way. It's odd. And I said, I'm not afraid. I'm not happy. I'm not sad. I'm not anything. Just in awe. I said, that's how I feel too. So he took me home. And as we went towards my driveway and pulled in, my mother and father had a big house on the river, and it looked across the river to where the mountains were where we were parked. My dad was running out to the car, and I thought, oh, am I late? Am I in trouble? What's happening? And he said, hurry, get out of the car. And I said, okay. He said, your mother and I just saw a UFO. It came up over the hill across from where we were sitting, turned to our left, and just barely made it across over the bridge, over the top of the bridge, and went up the river. And I said, how big was it? And he said, about the size of a small car. I said, what color was it? He said, bluish white. And my mother got up and she went, she heard the phone ringing. And she came out and she said, that was your grandma who lived further up Pomeroy, about 2 miles. She said, hurry, run out and look upriver. There are at least 2 UFOs coming your way. So that big thing brought with it a couple little ones. And I found out later that my grandmother and her neighbors had seen that UFO every night and could set their clock by it. If they were up about 3 o'clock, they'd look out and it would go downriver. So, shall I go on? You want me to stop and tell about my regression, what happened, what I found out? Would you like me to continue and tell you what I found out with my regression? Yeah. Okay. I was regressed in, I think it was May of 2017. It was before I moved out here, but about a year or so. The lady that regressed me had done this for years and years, and she was a psychologist. And I thought, well, I don't think you can put me under because of, just the type of individual I am. I don't like to be out of control, of myself. And she goes, oh, well, we'll relax you and see what you remember. The next thing I know is that she had, was talking to me, and I can remember, she said, begin wherever you want, wherever you feel comfortable. So I started telling her about my boyfriend picking me up, and I won't go through all that again, but I remembered what I had on, what he had on, and that brown-eyed girl was playing on the radio. That's how clear I could remember. I remember pulling in that night, and remember getting dark and all that. Then I remember what happened. He jumped off the car and left me there and ran around and got in the car. And I remembered him leaving me and then me turning to say, help me, help me. And I remember the quilt, the blanket that I was sitting on, slipped off the car onto the ground, onto a couple of big feet. I know this sounds fantastic, but I lived this, and it is true. I remembered everything that happened. I remembered everything about the creature, but there's still a little bit that I wasn't ready to delve into yet. I remember sitting there and I was, I don't know, I was crying. I was close to it and looking up. I was sitting on those feet and I looked up and I could see long legs, long hands and arms, long wings, and a head that fit down on shoulders. Now, people ask me if I saw the red eyes. From the vantage point I was at, I didn't, because the thing kind of hid its face to me. I remember being picked up and cradled in that blanket and carried to the car. And the car door was ajar. It opened it up and either took my boyfriend out or he got out. And he was, I remember his face, it was like comatose almost, like he was in shock. But I remember it putting me gently in the car and I slipped over because we had bench seats. And when my boyfriend got in and the door went slam shut, then I came to myself and to my senses. But what happened in that extra 20 to 30 minutes is beyond me. And when the therapist brought me out, she said, "Please come back." She said, "I know there's more to uncover." And at that time, I had had enough. I had dealt with it for 50 years. I finally got a computer and was able to find help. And then realizing just exactly what happened to me was pretty horrific. And it took me probably 2 or 3 years after I was regressed to come to terms with that. I've had a lot of therapy and professional help because of this. And it's left me with post-traumatic stress disorder. But I'm not afraid. The one thing that it left me with was the knowledge that there are these creatures out there, and yes, they do want to communicate with us. Sometimes people say, "Well, that Mothman, it was a devil." I was like, "No, I don't think so." I believe that it kept me from being on that bridge the night it collapsed, the Silver Bridge. And I have information, more stories about that. So, do you have any questions or?
Well,
Do you have any questions for me, or would you like me to tell you about the collapse of the Silver Bridge?
right. Oh, yes, please. Yeah, tell us about the Silver Bridge. Why do you think it collapsed?
Well, people blame Mothman or the Men in Black or the UFOs. I have a different theory. The bridge was very old. I think it was built in the 20s. It was a suspension bridge held up by eye bars. Now, each of these eye bars had like a little joint that went in and held each one of those together, and it suspended. And what happened is one of those eye bars gave way because of the weight of the bridge.
Went through.
And I think the Mothman was there and the Men in Black, because in some way, shape, or form, they may know about our future. And I think they were there to try to keep as many people as possible off that bridge. I didn't go back down to Point Pleasant until later in that summer of June or July, after I had my experience in April. My parents didn't want me to get down there because John Keel was down there and there was a lot of things going on down there, the Men in Black, and my parents asked me to stay away. Well, I was 16, so, I had a 65 Mustang, and I used to drive that thing around everywhere, and I would go to the TNT area and hang out with kids and run the quarter mile. We'd race up and down those roads in the TNT area because they ran for a long ways. And we'd hang out and look for things. I only saw a few lights in the sky. I didn't see Mothman anymore. And so 2 weeks before the bridge fell December the 15th, 1967. And 2 weeks before it fell, I wanted to do some Christmas shopping. And so my parents said, well, that's okay. We didn't have malls and big shopping areas around at that time. So I asked to go to Point Pleasant. My parents didn't care. So I got in my car and went down there. And it just so happened everybody was Christmas shopping that evening. And that bridge was loaded with people. And I stopped right on the middle of it. And it swung like a big swing.
Yeah.
And, I kind of felt uneasy for the first time. I'd gone across it many times, but I felt uneasy. And I felt like I shouldn't be there. But finally, the light at the end of the bridge turned green and the traffic went, and I got across, and I was thankful. And I went to the store down there. It was a little dress shop in downtown Point Pleasant. It's near where the Mothman Museum is now. I pulled in front and stopped, and I went to get out, and there was a weird-looking guy standing right in front of the building. I'm like, well, that looks like one of those weird guys that Mary Heyer from the newspaper, the Athens Messenger, was talking about hanging out down there. It was all dressed in black suit, black pants, black shoes, black hat, and sunglasses at night. So I almost changed my mind about getting out, but I waited till other people got out too. So I got out and went in the store, and I thought, I'm going to get a good look at this guy. And as I passed him, he wasn't I'm 5'2". I suppose he was about 5'7", 5'8". Wasn't very tall, but his skin was strange. The lights I could see from the store. He was sort of a gray color. And I thought, man, he's strange. And his eyes were oriental looking, almond shaped.
Yeah. So
I went in the store. I sort of nodded at him when I went by, and he just acted like he didn't see anybody. You're just standing there. Went in the store, and I asked the clerk that worked in there, what's with that guy out there? He's strange. She said he's been here every day for weeks, and the police say there's nothing they can do if he's not doing anything. Just don't pay any attention to him. So I bought what I went in there to get, and as I came out, I turned to him and spoke, and he acted like he didn't even see me. And I turned to my right and looked, and there was another one, a carbon copy of him, down the street leaning on a lamppost. Now, those guys creeped me out almost as much or a little bit more than the UFOs, because I thought, they look alien. So I got back in the car, and it's real dark from Point Pleasant to Pomeroy. So I drove back in the dark. And I was afraid, and I probably drove a little faster than I should have, but I got home. And then the night the bridge fell, our class at school was having a Christmas dance. So I went, and before I went to that, I got up that morning and told my mom I had a weird dream. And she said, well, what did you dream? And I said, I dreamed that there was all this crashing metal and falling in the water and Christmas packages bouncing everywhere and people screaming. And she said, oh, it's just a dream. You know, you have those. Just go to school, go to your dance, have a great time. So when we were at the dance, we were waiting on our band, and it was supposed to be there at around about 5 o'clock. So they could set up and everything. 5 o'clock came and went, and this is pre-cell phone days. Somebody came through the door, and I can still see the doors of that gymnasium opening up, and a guy walking in saying, the Silver Bridge has collapsed. And
my God.
our band was coming from that area below Point Pleasant in a town called Huntington, West Virginia. And they would have to go across that bridge to get to us. Well, I started crying, and, he said, I'm going to go home and wait for somebody to call me and verify that they're okay. Well, they were, but they were in line to go across the bridge when it collapsed. And they came up the West Virginia side to the bridge by my house and came across and then over and up to the high school. So we didn't have a very good time at the dance, but
no, it sounds like it.
So I didn't know until I read the Mothman prophecies that other people had that same dream. And I don't know if you've ever read the Mothman prophecies, the book. The book, I think, is better than the movie. Of course, the movie, there's a lot of sensationalism in it. There are some real parts, but there are also people in the movie that aren't real, or they're moved around, their names are changed. But
yeah.
So that's basically my story. So
brilliant. There's Mona in the chat room. She said, hiya everyone, I'm from Point Pleasant. I had a similar experience to Linda. Truth is healing. Thank you for your work, Linda.
You're welcome. I would like to talk to her if she wants to get a hold of me. I'm on Facebook. You can find me there. Send me a friend request.
Yeah. So
we'll
since
talk.
then, you've been going in, I'm going to say, since then, you've been going back in the forest and
Yes.
Looking for Bigfoot now.
Yes. I saw him once. What I think, anybody that says, oh, I saw Bigfoot and they talked to me and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's fine and good, because I saw Mothman and he picked me up. I'm not going to say you're wrong. What I'm just going to say is keep research, copy down notes, keep track of times, dates, things that happen, and share it with people. That's how we learn about what these things are. So, I go.
What was it like to see a Bigfoot? I'm going to say, when you saw Bigfoot, how big was it?
About the same size as Mothman. It was about 10 o'clock at night on a May evening. I was walking my dog Phoebe. Where I live is like a little community right in the middle of the country, and I live right at the edge of a forest. And as I walk up the road that you come into my house on, which is a windy gravel road that goes down, my house sits on the side of a small hill or mountain. I was walking her up that road, and I wasn't paying any attention. She stopped and she sat down. And I said, what's wrong, Phoebe? Don't you want to go any further? And I looked up, and it was moonlight. It wasn't full moon, but it was light enough. I didn't need a flashlight. And I could see somebody walking straight ahead of me about 30 yards. Now the road comes straight up the hill from my house and it makes a sharp turn to the left. What I saw was straight ahead and in the wood line. So I picked her up and just stood there. She didn't bark. She just kind of shook. And it was a dark silhouette with a conical head. And it was huge. And it just walked slowly. Now, there is an area up there where we all take, it's like a community refuge pickup, a garbage pickup. We take our garbage cans up there and leave them. And then the next morning, the trash man will come and pick it up. This thing, I don't know whether it was looking through the garbage. It was foraging for something. Anyway, I watched it for about 5 minutes and it walked from right to left. And then it turned a little bit to its right and went down over the hill. Now it's I don't know, 50-foot drop, maybe further, pretty much straight. So the next morning I call around to the neighbors and they're working people. So it's like, no, we weren't out. No, we weren't out. No, we weren't out. So I asked the girl that lived near where I saw it if I could come up and take some pictures and look for footprints. She said, sure, come on. So I went up there and I looked, and there's a path that goes down over the hill. So whatever that was either following a deer path or had made a path. And I saw a few footprints. And I measured kind of like on a tree how tall I thought the thing was. It was at least 9 feet tall.
Yeah. Oh my
so
God.
That was a big boy.
Do you think Bigfoot are very territorial then?
Territorial? By that, do you mean it chooses where it wants to live and who it wants to live with? Is that what you mean? Yeah. I think they're everywhere. I think they can be anywhere, urban or rural area, in near small towns. They get into trash bins outside of stores. They come out mostly at night. I don't know if they're strictly nocturnal, but different experiences I've had have been most of the time been at night. I had one at 3 p.m. where I heard what they call the samurai chatter. I walked these hills, and a couple years ago, a friend of mine was here, and we went out to look for it. And we got about probably a quarter of a mile from my house in the woods. And I looked up in a tree, and there was an 8-point deer buck, 8-point buck, horns, bleached out horns, and the snout, the head, up in a tree about 8 feet high. I'm like, what would put that up there?
What?
So I said, I can't reach it. Can you? And he said, no. So we just walked all around, and we found tree structures. They call it wood talk. We found bent over limbs. That time we didn't find any footprints, but I've got pictures of all that stuff and footprints. And about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he called and he said he had gone home, and he called and he said, why don't you go out there and get that skull out of that tree? And I said, well, I'll take a stick and I'll stick it up under it and poke it, and it'll fall down and I'll grab it. So that's what I did. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I went out by myself, no cell phone or nothing. I just was going to get it and come back. And I had a little trouble getting it, but I got the skull out of the tree and I put it in a sack. And I thought, man, this is weird. So I turned to the left to start to leave, and I heard about 20 feet in front of me were multiflora rose bushes and honeysuckle bushes and thorn trees and things. I couldn't see, but on the other side of that, I heard noise that sounded like wild pigs, wild hogs, the squealing, Do I do a good wild hog?
I like that.
And all I could think was, oh my God, trying to find a tree to climb to get away from those wild pigs.
Oh,
I had
God,
never
yeah,
seen
wild pigs.
Yeah, one wild pigs. Suddenly I felt like I couldn't really move, or I didn't want to move. And I just stood there still holding that bag. And they started to converse with each other. There were two of them. I couldn't see them. Whether they were cloaked, whether they were hidden, or whether they were lying down behind those bushes. But they were like, oh, yeah, and then it was like one of them was saying to the other, oh, let her have it. If we try to get it from her, we'll be seen, or she'll tell people we're here, and I don't want to kill her because she's not hurting anybody, that kind of thing. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe it. So then, after one big loud rah, I heard rah 3 times, rah, rah, and it moved away. But I couldn't see anything going or anything, just hear it. Then it was like I was broke out of a spell or stupor, and I thought, oh, I can run. It wasn't doing good to run because they're going to catch me if they want to. So I thought, instead of walking in the path, I'm going to walk over to the creek, and I'm going to walk back the creek. So that's what I did, but I was shaky. So I went over to the creek and took my shoes off and put my feet in the water. And I just sat there and kind of chanted and sang, and I tried to listen until birds started to chirp again, and I could hear forest noises, and I thought it was safe to get up. So I walked back. The creek will wind around probably 100 yards, and then there's my backyard, and I have steps to a back porch or back deck, and I can come in those doors and come to the house. Well, I ran from the creek to my house, and I ran upstairs here to this level, and I've got a veranda, or an above screened in porch off of this level here.
Yeah.
And I went outside and I took that skull out of the bag and I laid it on a table out there, and I said, here it is. If you want it, come back and get it. So ever since then, we've had knocking on the house and whooping and trees being knocked over. We had one night a year ago, or 2 years ago, I guess it was now, in March of 23. My granddaughter at the time was 13, and she stayed out here all night with me and my son, Chris. And he went outside and was taking the dog for a walk. And while he was out on the front deck, he heard, it was dark, and he heard something that sounded like pounding on metal in the backyard. Well, at the time I had a little utility trailer down there, and it sounded like somebody took something and pounded on that utility trailer. And Meredith had come in the house right prior to that happening, and she sat on the couch here with me, and he came in and he said, did you hear anything pounding outside? And I said, no. And he told me what he heard, and we were sitting there talking about it, and the pounding started, and it started on the north, the south, the east, the west of the house.
Oh,
boom, 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 boom. Now I have windows here in this house on this level that go clear to the floor. Now, where the windows are clear to the floor is 20 feet up from the ground. Well, the pounding was halfway up, at least on the side of the house by these windows. So it had to be something relatively tall to be banging on that. It banged from 7 o'clock at night till 9 o'clock at night. It was still banging, running around. We'd go out and look, turn lights on, it would set off the outside lights, the motion lights. We didn't hear any growling or anything, but Chris said, I'm calling the police. I'm calling the police and ask them to come down and shine flashlight around to make sure there's nobody out here just messing with us. So I said, I don't care. Meredith was crying. He was upset. I was just like, whatever. So the police came, they went down, he went out, they flashed their flashlights all around everything. This time it's about 10 o'clock. They came back in. And as soon as they were gone, the banging started again on the highest part of the house, almost to the roof. And I said, I don't know about you guys. I'm going to bed. So Meredith's like, I'm going to sleep with you. And I said, well, that's fine. I've got a bedroom downstairs. Chris has a bedroom up here. So she went down there, and the banging started on my bedroom window, which is ground level down there. She said, I can't sleep. And I said, I'll just try to go to sleep. Don't worry about the banging. It'll stop. And then all of a sudden, it was like a great big bang. And then it sounded like something was in the bedroom, like something had a handful of sand or rocks. I had my bedroom door shut and locked. It sounded like it was in the bedroom and threw those rocks against our bedroom door on the inside. You know what it sounded like if rocks hit something. Oh, I know. And she's like, I can't. I said, I've had enough too. Come on. So I went up and I said, Chris, can you come down here and stay down here with us for a little bit till everybody goes to sleep? So he said, yeah. So he came down and those two fell asleep. 3 o'clock, I got up and I came up here and sat, and the banging finally stopped about 3 o'clock. And 6 o'clock, Chris came up and noticed I was gone and thought maybe something had come in and got me. And I said, they're not going to get me. They'll throw me back. No. So he said, I don't know what it was. And we went out and we walked all around, no footprints, nothing on the side of the house, but it sounded like the house was caving in. So we hear things. One night I went outside in daylight, and I have a huge pine tree, but this right off of my deck, and then stairs that go up. And I walked over onto the cement stairs. The dog was going to the potty, and right on the other side of the pine tree in the yard, I heard, whoop! And I thought, yeah. I said, yeah. I said, I hear you over there, because I thought maybe it was a neighbor or something. And I thought, well, I can either in the house or I can go towards it and see if I can see it. So I put the dog in the house, and it went whoop again. So I walked over there to see if I could see it. And before I could get there, I heard it run off in the forest out into the woods. I go out, I call it the north, south, east, and west woods. Where the most structures or wood talk is in the west woods. I have gone as far as probably 2 miles by myself with the dog. I shouldn't tell people I do that. I don't go very far now, but I take my cell phone.
No.
But I follow the creek. I never get lost. And I have lots of stories.
Linda, have you still got the skull then?
Yes. And I've got another one. A couple months later, I was out there by myself. I had the dog, and I walked as far as I could go. And I turned around and I came back, and I was I'm always on the look for stuff, because I collect Native American artifacts, arrowheads, Paleolithic stones, and different things from that era out of the creek. So I was looking in the creek, and I walked up to almost to where I had found that one skull in the tree. And by golly, there was another one, but it was laying on the ground. And I've got that one too. And I've got both of them hanging on my veranda out back here. I collect Native American artifacts. I walk in the creek. Pardon me?
Do they still come round your house then, to this day?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I hear one night I was surrounded by what you think might be owls. Now, we do have owls here. We have barn owls and screech owls, great horned owls, and barred owls. B-A-R, I think it's B-A-R-R-E-D. Mostly barred owls. And they go, whoo, 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 whoo. And they're supposed to say, who cooks for you? You know, I'm a nature girl, so I say, whoo, 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 whoo.
Yeah,
So
I like
I heard that in the house, and I thought, oh boy, I got my flashlight and I went out and I thought, I'm going to see it. But the time I was done, there were 7 or 8 of them just surrounded the house. And I thought, I don't think so. Because I have read that Bigfoot can mimic anything. Now we have coyotes.
Yes.
And the coyotes will howl certain times at night. And if you listen real close, and I've got some recordings, you can hear something else in the midst of the coyotes that is not actually a howl, but a, like that. And one time I heard that when I was way out in the creek in the South Woods, and up over the creek bank in the bushes, I walked by with the dog and something growled at me. And I turned around and stopped, and I said, okay, I'm leaving. So I turned around and I went towards home, and I thought, wonder what that was. So I turned around and went back to see if I could see something, and it growled again, and this time it was louder. So that could have been anything, but then it could have been something else. So you put all the things that you find in your research, the footprints, the noises, the knocks, the sounds of the different forest animals. I grew up in the woods, so
yeah.
you know, I know what different animals and bird noises. There's one particular bird that I hear when I go out in the woods, and sometimes they say they will mimic birds. I could go on and on and on. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, it's you know, with Bigfoot, it seems to. Do you think you're chosen to see Bigfoot then?
They know. I think they are sentient beings. I think they are a type of hominid, whatever. They're a type of. They may be a hybrid person and animal. I don't think that they're going to harm me. They've had every opportunity, because before I got my dog, I went out there by myself. If they wanted to hurt me, they could. You can hear my pup probably. I've got him, and he hears me. He's worried about me, but he'll calm down.
Do they, Linda? Do they ever leave you a gift?
Oh yes. One time I heard something when I was on the porch on my front deck. I had one of the high-rise table and high-rise chairs, and it was raining, and I was sitting out underneath the porch roof and talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and it started to rain really hard, and suddenly something threw a giant rock probably 10 to 15 feet away from me, and I ran out and got it, and it's probably about 8 or 9 inches long and probably about 4 or 5 inches around. And it came from the woods in front of me down into my road. And then that next morning, I still have that rock. And the next morning, I went to go outside, and there was a beautiful piece of forest moss. It looked like carpet. It was about that big. It was probably about 5 inches by 5 inches. It was laying on the rug in front of my door. And one other time, like I said, I collect Native American implements and things, and I find so many strange things, and I think that they leave me stuff in the creek where I can spot it. And I find triangular shaped rocks all the time. I've heard people say Bigfoot have an affinity for triangles. It has something to do with the Atlanteans and the pyramids, and how long ago when they lived that they had that. Then there was some kind of message on these stones. This is just what I heard. I don't know, but I collect those, and I've got a lot. One I found this past summer was made out of green sandstone. It is pretty. It's not very big, probably three inches, about 3 inches by 2 inches, but it was so pretty. And I walked out there with a bag looking for those, and I found a bunch of them, and I particularly loved this one, green one. Well, I got way out there and it was getting dark, and I thought I should come back. And it started to thunder and it started to rain. And so I started to run, and my bag that I had my stones in broke the bottom. Well, I was picking them all up, and I pulled out my shirt, and I was putting them all down in my shirt, carrying them and running. And I got back to the house. I got back to the house and I thought, I'm going to put them out here because I'm too lazy to wash them off. I'll let the rain wash them off. So I said, oh, my green stone's gone. Oh, and I looked and looked, and it was gone. So I laid all of them out there. The next morning I got up and went out to get them, to dry them off and put them away. There laid my green stone right in the middle with a little circular piece of quartz on top. They brought something or somebody. Nobody knew I was out there. Nobody but the forest people, maybe.
No. Yeah, exactly. Do you think Bigfoot are interdimensional then?
I go back and forth with that, but I think that they have something to do with aliens. And if the aliens are people from our future, that they know how to transverse through the dimensions from one time to another. They do. So Bigfoot probably does too. I think they have the ability to cloak, just like an octopus. There's a lot of creatures that can. What is it? A chameleon. It changes its colors. And there's no reason why it wouldn't. If it laid flat on the forest floor out here and turned green and brown, I wouldn't see it unless I stepped on it. But yeah, I think they can. I think that's why you see 3 or 4 tracks and then none. But I also think they backtrack. But I only think they do that when they know there's people in the area. I don't know if the Native Americans used to do that. I think that's something they used to do. And I know that that natives talked about Sasquatch, the Sabe people, and I think some of them out west had close relationships with them. I think they traded with them and learned how to do different things, like raise different crops, maybe even just herbal things. And I think that the natives gave them things in exchange for food and medicine. Why wouldn't they? Anything's possible.
Yeah, I heard that story as well about changing food. They would give them food. They would give them food. All them many thousands of years ago. So, do you think they've always been here on Earth then?
I think they've been here as long as some of the others. I think we're finding out now, especially since this, the discoveries that have possible discoveries under the pyramids. I have a book about Atlantis. I've been studying more and more about Atlantis. I believe that there have been more than one ancient civilization through the millennia. And I think that maybe the Egyptians are one arm of the Atlantean people. So I think that, I think they've been here, and maybe they had a purpose. Maybe they made them for a certain purpose. I know now that we have the capability of cloning, and it's hard to tell what different governments, not necessarily ours, but different governments are doing with that. And I think that there's a possibility. Anything's possible anymore, I think.
Has there ever been a sighting of Mothman again recently? Or
2021, there was one not too far from me out on Interstate 77. There have been several down around, I think, the Huntington area or southern part of West Virginia. I have a good friend that he and his wife were just riding around one afternoon and saw something in the middle of a country road and stopped, and the thing stood up and spread its wings and went up. And this man, he's a researcher and a credible person and a good friend. And when I told him about my experience, he said, I had one, let me tell you. So I think there's many people that see it, continue to see it, but I don't know if there's just one. I think there may be more because of the Chicago flap, and then there was ones out west. Just like Bigfoot, I remember it was in October, I think, after I had my experience, that the Patterson Gimlin film was out. And I got bubblegum cards with those pictures of Bigfoot. I might still have that somewhere, but that fascinated me. And I think that, there's all kinds of creatures out there. And if we knew everything was out there in the woods, it's biblical. It's biblical. It talks about.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I think it's biblical as well. What about werewolves? Dogmen?
I think that one thing that I heard out there that Phoebe was so afraid of when it just growled at me. I think that this is just what I perceive. This is the feelings that I have. I feel that if there are Bigfoot in my woods, they protect me from other dangers. And I think I get it in my mind, you need to leave. And if I hear that, I leave. And I've gotten so that I listen to that little voice of intuition. I was just posted something the other day about being an empath and having intuition. If you have intuition, women's intuition, they call it, mine is times 1,000. If I have a feeling about something, I'm learning, and I make mistakes just like everybody else, and I suffer from it, but that's lessons. So yeah, I think they can communicate telepathically. I have heard twice in my life, once here and once when I was at my other home in this year. Hi. Now, and I turned and I said, hi. But I see spirits. I see spirits.
Yeah,
I see animal spirits. So I had guinea pigs when my kids were little. We raised guinea pigs for them for a 4-H club. And one of them was passing away, and I held it and I was petting it, and I put my hand on it and I prayed for it. And I felt the spirit of that animal go through its body, through my hand and out. And I thought it was like an electrical current. And I thought, man, that's fantastic. And so I'm going to do that again, I thought, whenever another one passes. So another one was getting ready to pass. I did the same thing and I felt it. So I read people. I see people out that I don't know. Now I'm basically a shy person, believe it or not. It used to be really hard for me to talk to people, and I've kind of on a mission to tell people about my experience, not to be frightened. not to be frightened, but to know that this is true. This is out there. And I'll see people and I'll walk up to them and I'll say, you just lost someone close to you, your mother. And I can tell them their name and different things about them that, you know, and they'll cry and I'll say, I'm not here to upset you. I feel spirit has led me to you to comfort you and let you know they're fine. And that I won't do that if I rarely feel negative things. I'm a Christian, a born again Christian. So it's very important to me to not have to tell somebody something bad. I won't do it. Even if I have a feeling about something, unless I think it will keep them out of harm, I don't say anything. But I am quick and always happy to share if I feel spirits communicating for somebody's better off.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice. Well, I've carried on a bit longer tonight because with interference and everything like that. Where can people get in touch with you if they've got a sighting?
They can add me as a friend on Facebook. That'd probably be the easiest way. Send me a friend request and then direct message me and we can talk. I would like to hear about your sightings. I have a book that I wrote. A friend of mine, Mark Randall, helped me to get it published. And here it's called Beyond the Pale Moonlight, a UFO and Mothman Encounter. And I tell my story and there's some pictures in there of different things and pictures, some stuff about the Silver Bridge. And this is on Amazon, or if you want one from me, and you can get it cheaper for me if you want to just would like to have one. I can, save you a little bit of money. And also, I'd like to tell you about this book by a friend of mine. His name is Mr. David Walker. It's called Supernatural Cryptids: The Return of the Nephilim. This is a man that you may want to get a hold of and have on your show. I've got my Bigfoot stories. I've got my Bigfoot stories in here, and there's stories by Richard McCandlish, and he is he goes into a place called the Pit at Hocking Valley in Ohio, around the Old Man's Cave area, and he has one of the best pictures of a dog man or werewolf that you would ever want to see. There's also an author in here named Kane Michael, and he lives in that same general area, I think, and he studies cryptids. And then there's Jody Cook. He's a famous author about the paranormal. And then me, and then Matt Emch, EMCH. He had a dogman encounter when he was, I don't know, probably 10 or 11 in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area in an old steel mill, and almost got attacked by a dogman. So these things are out there. Like I said, David's book, you can find it on Amazon. And mine, it's on Amazon too, but it's just basically the story that I told you today.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Will you send me David's name and everything in a message to me? And then I'll get in touch with him about David's show.
Book. David's book just went to Frankfurt, Germany. It's on sale there. Now it's over in Europe.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds good.
And then I will be
interesting.
Yeah.
Go on.
I'll be at the Northern Panhandle Paranormal Conference. And that's a free conference in Brooke County, West Virginia. It's May 17th.
Oh,
and it's free, and it's from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I'll be talking there. I'll have a table, have some of my books if you want to come up and say hi. And then on the 18th, I'll be at the Beaver Creek Conference for Bigfoot at the Beaver Creek State Park in East Liverpool, Ohio, from 10 until 3. So I'll be at my books there, and I'll be talking about this stuff. And let's see, the Ohio Bigfoot Conference is May the 3rd, and at Salt Fork in Ohio. And that I won't be there as a speaker, but I'll be there meandering around and talking to friends. And there's a lot of Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum he's usually there. And Cliff Barrickman.
Great.
So, but that's all.
Yeah,
that's good fun.
Great people. Great people
Yes.
to be around.
Yes.
Well, Linda, what can I say? Thank you so much.
It's been fun. I mean, I talk nonstop. I'm sorry.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're a great speaker.
Thank you.
That's good about you. Got plenty of
It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's been wonderful.
It's been good fun.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you
very
too.
Welcome. You too.
You take care, and we'll get you back on again sometime later in the year.
That'll be fine. I'll probably have more experiences. I want to show you my dog.
Thank you.